Hi guys, Samantha from Jessica Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create this beautiful pendant here. Now, as I'm sure pink is not I'm sure that pink is not your favourite colour for some of you, so just feel free to change the colours in this pendant. You can use any colours you want. Today I'm just working with pink, but feel free to play around with it and see what colours you like. So, we're going to be making two veneers. Here are the examples of the veneers we're going to be making. So let's get started on this one. So you're going to need a sheet of white polymer clay rolled out on the thickest setting of your pasta machine. And then we just get this in the middle. And I just want to zoom out a little bit. There we are. Then you're also going to want some 99% alcohol. So here we are, and I want you to just spray this clay, and what we're going to be trying to do is we're just essentially going to be trying to harden it up a little bit. By spraying the alcohol on it, it semi-cures the top of the clay, which is quite important for our next step. Okay, so then I just take a wet wipe and blow. And while you're doing this, if you have any fingerprints on your clay, like we had a little pink fingerprint there and a little pink fingerprint there, you can wipe it and it generally cleans the clay up really well. Okay, just spraying that again. And you'll do this a few times. Just take the wet wipe and gently dab it dry. And then blow. And you basically want to stop when you can't see the sheen on the clay anymore once it is dry. That means that it will be semi-cured on top. Okay, so this is just about done, and I sprayed it around 5 times. So also what you should be able to do, let me see if I can direct this right. Hopefully you can see there that it does start to crack. I'm not sure if the camera is able to pick that up, but you should be able to start seeing that. Doesn't need to crack a lot, but it does need to start cracking. Okay, so that's the first step. Just burnish that onto your tile, because the back is still very raw, most of it is. And now you're going to need some alcohol ink pens. Now keep in mind you do not have to use alcohol ink pens. You can use any alcohol ink you have. Just use a very small brush and just do exactly what I'm doing and act like the brush is the pen. But if you do have pens, I do recommend using those over a brush. Okay, so I'm going to be working with some really nice alcohol ink pens that I got from Craft Online. Here is the brand. You can see it has a broad and a fine end, so you can get a broad-ended brush and a fine-ended brush and just dip it in alcohol ink. So I'm going to start with the broad end, and if you're buying these, here are the numbers. So I've got a broad end, and this is why it's important for our clay to be cured. Firstly, because we want crackle later on, and secondly, because the pens will gouge into the clay if it is completely raw. It won't streak along the clay nicely, like this. So you can see that you could quite easily replicate this with a brush. Okay, so that's our one colour. Then I'll move down to the next colour. Here is the number, I'm not sure if that's focusing, deep red. And again, going to work with the broad section. And hopefully you can see the cracks coming through here. I'm not sure if that's highlighting it enough that you can see it on the camera. But that's going to add to our overall effect. So just go and take a bunch of your chosen colours, keep it in like one colour section. So if you want your pendant to be kind of blue, make sure that you keep it to either light blues and greens, or dark blues and light blues, or dark blues and purples. Because your colours are all going to be intermingling with each other. And you want it to be a little variance in colour, but you don't want it to be kind of creating mud. So don't go and use red and blue and green on the same veneer. Make sure that if you want to test it, you can just do a little test over here and then mix in your other colours and see if it makes mud. If it does, then you need to work around that by taking out a colour also, because we're overlapping colours, as you can see here, and if they make mud, it's going to look quite ugly. However, if they don't make mud, it just creates a really beautiful, slightly multi-toned piece. So I'll just continue doing this basically until I get rid of all of the white spots. There we are, and that is how it should look. Now you might need to go over a few times just to make sure that your colours are well blended together, because you don't want them to have really sharp spots. I'm just going to quickly dab in there. And just make sure that you get rid of all of the little white spots. Now what you want to do, that you've got a nice blended background, is you want to take the same colours that you used, and let me just bring these all up here so that you can see the numbers. There you go. Take them and go to the fine end, and I want you to just go across the sheet and make these squiggly patterns. And all of this will be somewhat visible in the pendant. If you don't know it's there, it's not completely obvious, but it just adds to the effect. So just take each of the colours and make a pass doing these squiggly lines. Okay, and that is how it should look. Now I'd advise taking a piece of plain printing paper and just gently burnishing over the surface to make sure that you don't have any gouges in your clay. Just like so. There we go. And that will also lift up any excess alcohol ink that might not have dried yet. There we are. So that's quite pretty looking. Now the next step is going to be to take black alcohol ink, and here is the black alcohol ink. And again, you can use a very fine tipped brush to do this. And I want you to just go and draw lines. And try and keep them somewhat evenly spaced. Like so. And they don't have to be perfect, but you do want them to have a general even space. There we are. Okay, so I quite like how that's turned out so far. Next is we're going to be using some metallic alcohol ink. And now you can also use silver paint if you happen to have any. So just give it a good shake. I'm just opening it up away from our veneer because it can drop little bits and pieces. Now if you're using paint or alcohol ink, I want you to get a little ball tool. And before we start, I am going to just take that ball tool and make little indents in the clay. Like so, and you would do that for all of these in between areas. Then drop a little bit of your alcohol ink or paint onto your tile, and use the same ball tool you used to make the indents to gently drip alcohol ink into those holes. And just be careful, you do not need a lot of alcohol ink to do this, so don't go haywire with it. And they're not supposed to be perfectly uniform, so don't worry if you get some spilling around the sides. You can hear pumpkin outside, I do apologise for that. Okay, and so you'll just do that for your entire veneer. Okay, and here is what you should have basically at the end of that. So now leave this for around half an hour just to make sure that all of the alcohol inks have dried. so that we can run this through a pasta machine and get those cracks going. But we want all of our alcohol ink to be dry before we do that, so leave it for at least half an hour. You can see how really pretty that looks so far. Okay, so I'm just going to pop this to the side, and we're going to bring over another piece of clay. And now, I don't think I mentioned before, but I ran my clay through my thicker setting, which is 2mm thick, in case you were wondering. Okay, so I'm just quickly cleaning up the tile, because the last thing we need is bits of alcohol ink getting onto this veneer. Okay, then take your silver alcohol ink again, or paint, and I'm just going to drop a bunch of this on here, and then you can use a paintbrush to smooth it over, but I find that my finger does a much better job because it smooths it out better. There's no brush strokes or anything like that once I'm done. And again, you can use paint. Okay, and I'm just brushing it over so that we have no white areas. Then let that dry, and in the meantime grab some pastels and match them up with the colours that you used in your veneer. So I'll just show you the brand of pastels I'm using. So there's the brand, and there you can basically get an idea of what the box looks like. So I'm going to go and match up my pastels to my other veneer while this dries. Okay, and while we are waiting for that to dry, I'll bring over another piece of white clay, run it on the same setting as all of the others, and I'm going to bring over some black Crackle paint. So here is the brand, hopefully you can see there, and this is great, it makes excellent crackle. So, just going to get that off my clay there. And just squeeze that on. And then I'll rub that over, and make sure you don't get any white spots. You want it to be a nice pure black colour, so you might need to rub a bit more. This paint is super thick, it's more of a paste really. So just rub that across, and this needs to dry completely before you can start to crackle it. So that also needs to dry a bit. So for this tutorial you need a little bit of patience because of the drying times, but it's all worth it in the end. Okay, just spreading it out evenly. Okay. There we are. And now for the next step, you can use a hairdryer or a heat gun, whichever one you have handy. Just make sure that your heat gun is not so hot that it's going to kill the clay. You should be able to hold your hand under whatever you are blasting your clay with, and it shouldn't get hot. It should be a really nice, pleasant warm. So I'm using the Ozito heat gun, and I've got it on the lowest setting possible. There we are. So after blowing it that for maybe around 3 minutes or so, you should find that the paint actually starts to crackle a bit on its own. That's when you know that it's just about ready. So you can start cracking that by hand if you want, if you don't want it too big a crackle. But I'm going to be running this through my pasta machine on my thickest setting. You can see what beautiful crackle that started to create. So that's one way. Now I'm going to flip it and roll it through the other way and take it down one setting. And that's how it starts to look. Okay, and now when you're rolling, if you find that some areas aren't cracking as well as they should, you need to go at those with the heat gun a little bit longer, or a hairdryer, because they haven't dried completely. There we go. And that should do it. Now I'm going to run it through a little bit more. Take it down one more setting. And there we are. I like what I'm seeing there. I'm probably going to leave it at that. Okay, so quickly clean up your tile. And our other veneer should be just about done by now. Let's have a look. Yeah, it looks just about done. You should be able to touch it and it not come off on your fingers. Okay, and this one area here is a little sticky still. That's fine. Okay, now choose a stencil that you like. I've gone with this one because I like the squiggly patterns that kind of resemble the squiggly patterns that we have on our alcohol ink veneer. But go with any stencil you wish to go with. So just place that down. Then I'm just going to take a piece of plain printing paper and I'm going to burnish it on so that it is well stuck in there. Because for our next step we really do need that, because we're going to be applying some liquid clay. So just thoroughly burnish that. Okay, and that will remove any little bits of excess alcohol ink. Okay, then take any translucent liquid clay you happen to have. I'm going to be using with Kato clear liquid clay, but any liquid clay will work. Just make sure it is transparent. And the reason I'm putting translucent liquid clay on is first so that our pastels stick, and secondly so that once they're baked they are thoroughly stuck to the clay. They're not going to cause any issues with coming off the clay, because I have had issues like that in the past, and after a bit of experimenting I found that the liquid clay is a really great way to seal them in without applying any varnish. So just go and brush your liquid clay over the surface. Make sure to get in all of those little sections. It will darken up that alcohol ink. Okay, and just do that for your entire veneer. Okay, then take your chosen pastels, and here are my chosen pastels, and you can see they just about match the colour of my veneer perfectly. And take a blade. I'm going to be using this little craft knife, and I'm just going to start scraping it across the surface. And now we're not going to use a brush to brush this back onto the clay. We're going to leave it with these really large, I want to say globules, specks maybe. So just leave them like that, and this is why we wanted to apply the liquid clay, because this just means that they stick exactly where they are and will stay there. Because I'm not going to use a brush to brush this on, I'm just going to burnish it lightly with a piece of plain printing paper later. But other than that we have nothing else sticking it on, so you really do need that liquid clay on there. So I'm just going through each of these and applying them. Okay, and then once you're pretty happy with it, give it a blow. And you'll see that not much comes off. Just a little bit of the excess. Okay, and then if you see some areas that are a little bit plain, just go with your pastel and deliberately get those areas. Give it a blow. And again, as I was saying, you can swap the colours out for anything you want. I haven't done anything pink in a while, so that's why I've gone with the pink. Personally, I generally just go towards blue. That's my go-to colour. So feel free to play around with whatever you want. Okay, and we're just about done. Just making sure that I get pretty much everywhere. Okay, put goes to the side. Give it a quick blow. I'm going to just bring over a piece of plain printing paper, and I just want to test whether this does anything, because if it picks it all up, that's not good. But it didn't do anything bad, so I'm just going to give it a really quick burnish so that they're stuck down nicely. And I'm not pressing too hard. Okay. And you will see that it does take off a bit of pastels, but not too much. And now we're just going to lift this straight up. And there we are, you can see how that came out. Quite pretty. Let's see how that looks with this. It looks really nice. It's actually quite different colours from this one, where we had more pink. I went more red on this one, and I really like how that turned out. Right. So then what you need to do is you just want to trim away some areas, because some areas have excess liquid clay that leaked out, like over here. That needs to go. And around here. And here. Okay. There we go. Just bring that up for you to see. Looks really nice. And I go just pop that off to the side. Quickly clean up your tile. Get rid of any of that excess pastels and things. I use a wet wipe just to quickly clean, and then a tissue just to dry. And we're now going to check on this. Now what we want to do is we just want to check that it's dry, because the last thing I want to do is run through the pasta machine and it's not actually dry. So just go, gently press, and if you see anything coming off on your ball tool, that means it's not dry. So I'm just going around and gently pressing in. And there are some areas where it's not completely dry, so I might leave this for about another 15 minutes just to make sure that it is completely dry, because you just don't want to run that through, because it just ends up smudging. Now what I will do to help it along a bit is I'm going to just take a piece of plain printing paper and give it a very fine burnish, and just hold it in place when you're doing this. Okay. Just because I want to, the more space you give that alcohol ink, the more it will, the quicker it will dry. Okay, I'm so tempted to run this through a pasta machine. I'm just going to put this to the side and I must leave it. Okay, so I've let this sit for around another 15 minutes, and so everything should be dry by now. So I'm going to start by running it through my thickest setting on my pasta machine, which is not going to do much, it's just going to start those crackles. Then I ran it through from this side to this side. Now I'm going to flip it and run it from this side to this side, and I'm going down 1 setting. You can see we're starting to very gently get some cracks. I'm going to flip it again, take it down 1 setting, and roll. And there we are, we're really starting to show those cracks now. And now I might take it down just 1 more setting. Though I don't want to, I'm just going to burnish it actually, because it's right on the edge there. So I don't want to overdo it actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this part, which needs to be crackled a little bit more, and very gently stretch it. Excuse me. Okay, then give it a really nice burnish. And this will just start to flatten out a few areas. And also it will just flatten those cracks, because some of them are really deep and I don't want them to be like that, because then we have the risk of our veneer cracking. So I prefer to just burnish this so that it gets everything together. Okay, there we go. So you can see it looks really, really nice. I love how this looks. For some reason it almost looks like paper to me for some reason. It's like you printed out something on paper and it's gone really old. I don't know why it reminds me of that, but anyway. So there we are, you can see how beautiful that looks. So now we're ready to start assembling. Okay, so our last step before assembling everything is just to take this and gently burnish it. And hold your paper in place when you're doing this because you don't want it shifting around and redepositing that pastel in the wrong spots. Yeah, and it will also soak up any excess alcohol ink, not alcohol ink, liquid clay that you might have. Okay, so now we're just about ready for assembly. So I just want to thin this out a little bit, so I'm going to run it through on my thickest setting. Okay. Then I'm going to take it down one setting. Okay, and I'll leave it there. And that will flatten it out even more. And I just want it to be about the same thickness as the others. So this has been run out to about 1.5 millimeters thick. Okay, so grab this. And I fuss with it a lot because I don't want to cut it. It looks so pretty and there's always a risk that I might mess it up. But we have to. So I'm choosing the best side, and I like this side because it has a really nice consistent crackle, whereas this side we didn't seem to get as much crackle. So I'm just going to take a ripple blade, and I'm just going to cut from corner to corner. And I'll put that onto the side. Okay, just pick that up and put that over there. Then this one I'm also going to do the same. I'm going to cut from one side to the other. And I'm using a ripple blade. And I like this piece the best. So you can see those two go really nicely together. Now we're going to take our black and all I'm going to do with this one is I'm just going to quickly trim up this edge here. And then I just need to bring this closer so I can see what I am doing. And I'm just going to do it at an angle. Like so. Then I'm going to place this between those pieces so that it links together nicely. And then just gently press up against it just to make sure you get a nice join. And then I will do the same for this one. Push it right up against that. And this is why I wanted to remove the excess alcohol ink, liquid clay, because we're going to be pressing on it and we don't want to be picking up liquid clay on our fingers. Okay, and there we go. So that is our finished veneer. Now we are going to just take our black, and I am going to save a piece or two because I do want to make some earrings with our excess. So I'm just going to quickly trim out 2 pieces so that I can use those. Okay, but the rest I want to use for the back of this. And so I'm just going to roll this out thin or setting just so that I can cover more ground with it. So I've run that out to about 0.8 millimeters thick. Okay, then I'm going to be using my largest half square maxi cutter. You can use any rectangle cutter you want for this. Before you cut into anything though, burnish these together so that that seam is a little less noticeable, and also so that they just stick together, so that they're not going to fall apart when we try and put the backing on. Okay. And I'm just going to take a stiff blade and lift this up. very carefully flip it over. I'm going to position this on the back and just gently smooth, but I'm not going to do too much because I do want to be able to remove excess. Okay. Then I'm going to take this and figure out whereabouts I want to position it, and I might actually be able to get earrings out of this piece. Okay. Okay, so I've got it positioned in the right spot, and I'm now going to place this Kemper cutter roughly in the right spot, and I'm going to cut out, spin, get rid of that, and then position this again. And this I find helps me get this hole centered better than if I tried to do it the other way around with cutting this out first and then putting the Kemper cutter in. So generally that's how I do it. I find where I want it roughly, put this in, and then I cut out with my cutter. Okay, so I've got it positioned in the right spot. Then cut straight down. And just make sure you get that. I just press around these edges because I've got Crackle on the back. Okay, you should be able to lift that up with a pretty clean finish. Now, because of the Crackle that we've had, we are going to need to just gently trim away some of these little straggly bits. It's not much, and it's mostly because clay crackled a little bit, or we have some of the excess paint on the back. There we are. And then let's just see if that fits. Okay, no, because when you press on the cutter, this shrinks it down a little bit. Lift that up, and there you can see what that looks like. The edges are pretty nice. We'll give them a very light sand later on, and then we've got a really nice crackled back. So I'm just going to pop that off to the side, and I'm going to see if I can lift this up. Can I? No. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to see if I can get some earrings out of this. Okay, so let's see about getting some earrings out. So this is a cutter from my half square set. And I don't think there's enough space here. So what we'll do to remedy that, so I'm just going to cut this away and this away. Okay, and then because we have a Crackle on the back, I'm just going to trim that off. Have a look at our back, and I'll do the same here as well. Just trim away excess. Have a look on the back, and then I'm just going to patch it up. So that gives us some more space to work with. Like so. Okay, so that's that one. And then I'm going to do the same here. I will just gently patch up. Because it's Crackle, you should very easily be able to do this. Because we don't have a very defined pattern. So by just sticking this down, you should be able to hide those seams. Okay, here we go. Okay, now I'm just gonna cut away that, and then I'm gonna take this and this, and I'm just gonna pop them together like that, and I'm just going to trim it lightly. just to get rid of this edge. So it's a little fiddly, but that's fine. It's making the most of all of your scraps. Okay, and then I'll just slot that in. And I'm going to take this side and I'm just going to gently cut that. And I will press that into place too. Okay, and then just make sure that you take a piece of paper and just give that a really good burnish. Okay, and just continue burnishing until it's well stuck together and you've got rid of any seams. Like there's some around here still that I want to get. And then you should be able to cut out some earrings from it. And in the meantime, we still have some perfectly good veneers to the side that you can use in any project you want. Okay, and there we are. Now I'm just going to use a micro circle cutter to cut out our holes. And those can be some earrings. Okay, now we can move on to the next step, which is essentially doming. Okay, now you can use any doming tool you happen to have, but I'm going to be using this jar that I have. Let me zoom out a bit more so you can see. There, so I've got a jar here. It's rather large, but basically I want something that has an symmetrical, I don't want it to be tapering edge. So this sort of an edge is not right. I want something that has an edge like this where it's the same the whole way around for it. Okay, and then you're going to need to grab a piece of scrap clay, and I've just got this poppy cane end that didn't really get used into anything, and you can use that to just pop this down to the tile so it's not rolling all over the place. And just take your piece, and now it's probably not going to stick because of the crackle. Just lay it on top and leave it, and as it bakes it will start to gently dome because of the heat. As for the earrings, I am probably going to leave them straight as they are, and they will be baked on a piece of plain printing paper for an hour. This will also be baked for an hour at Primo's recommended temperature, and then when we're done I'll show you how to very easily finish it. We'll do a very quick sand along the edges and then we can assemble. Okay, and here is how they look now that they are out of the oven. So we're going to be sanding the edges because they need a bit of a sand, and all we're going to do is we're just going to take some 400 grit polishing papers, and that's all we're going to do. We're just going to give it a very fine sand. If you want to give it a higher sand, if you want to start with this grit and go higher, you most certainly can, but I find that it's not really necessary. But just continue sanding until it's nice and smooth and doesn't feel rough, because right now it does feel a bit rough. Just by giving it a light sand like that, we'll just smooth it out nicely. Now I'll repeat with the earrings as well. Okay, there we are. Tidied up the sides. They're nice and smooth to touch now. So now we're ready to seal it. So I'm going to be using a Renaissance wax. I find that this works really well for this because I do want to keep the texture. I don't want to flatten it out with something like resin, and I don't really want to use something super shiny like Varathane, so I'm going to stick with the wax. All I'm doing is I've just taken a bit and I'm now just smudging that over the surface. And and do that for your earrings as well. And I don't really worry about the back, that I will buff as well. And the Renaissance wax tends to get onto the buffing wheel, and the buffing wheel does a pretty good job of distributing it across the entire piece. So now let's just bring over that. You can use a soft cloth if you have, but it's best to use a buffing wheel if you can. That should be enough for this, and you can see it gives it a very nice soft sheen, and it's done that on the back as well. So you can see that one versus that one, it's got a much nicer sheen to it. So these ones I'll also buff, and then we can move on to assembly. Okay, so here are our pendants. So now we are going to string them. So I've just popped them to the side, and I've got 2 pieces of rat tail cord here, and they're silver. And I'm just going to finish off both ends, and so we're just going to be using a cord end. Very nice, easy way to finish something. Just give that a good squish. Give it a little pull to make sure that it's properly squished on. And then I'm going to do the exact same on the other side. And these cord ends you can get on my Etsy shop, and I find they're a super easy way to finish off cords. You don't have to worry about cones and things like that. And the thing is, sometimes your cords aren't really big enough to accommodate a cone, so these are really a good in between the AccuFlex and the proper, almost like ribbon ends. There we are. Then we only need 2 jump rings, and we also need our clasp. So all you do is you grab pliers, open up your jump ring, attach it to your clasp, and then attach it to your cord end. Easy peasy. Okay, now I've lost the other jump ring, there it is. Open it up and attach it to the clasp. There we are. Okay, so then I'm just gonna put those together. And we're going to string our piece. And I got it the wrong way around again. I always do that. If you've watched any of my tutorials, you know that I always, whenever I'm doing this stringing technique where you just kind of loop it through the hole, I always get it the wrong way around. There we go. Okay. Then just fuss with it a little to position it right on the front and the back. Okay, and that is all you will need with that one. It's a nice, easy, simple pendant. And here's the other one. And now keep in mind that the colours are going to vary depending on the different conditions as far as the alcohol ink goes. These were using the exact same colours of alcohol ink, And I did change the pastels a little bit to match this one, but you can see it changed quite a bit. Okay, now for the little earrings, we will take jump ring, and you can make them a little more complicated if you want, but this is great jewellery for gifts and things, because I know that you guys like making market jewellery. So this is one of those that would work really well for that. There we are. One jump ring. Grab another jump ring. Attach that. Okay, and then I'll grab an ear wire and attach that to the jump ring. And close it up. And there we are, nice and easy. And what I actually might do is I might add on a second jump ring there. Attach it through that loop. And through that loop. Oops. It's so fiddly. There we go, just about right. There we go, that looks better. 2 jump rings generally is always better than 1. Okay, and I'll repeat with this one. Okay, and there we are. That is our finished tutorial. So please feel free to play around with it as much as you want. Feel free to change the colours as you want. I would love to do this in blue, but I did want to try out pink today. So play around with it and see what you guys come up with. Remember, you can use alcohol ink and a brush instead of alcohol pens if you don't have it. And as for the silver ink, you can use paint and replacement for that as well. And also, if you don't have pastels, you can also use mica powders if you want. So please feel free to play around with that as well. And I hope to see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.